Before we get started on our normal episode of Game Masters Arsenal, I've got a couple of announcements to make. First thing first, in regards to our our Copper Dragon giveaway. This is all recorded as live, so is recorded live. So if you hear me stutter or anything, that's because I am no script, no nothing like that. But in regards to our Copper Dragon giveaway that we started midway through the month, we have a winner. I would like to announce that it is, as soon as it pulls up, John Lathan, 9620 on YouTube. You have won our Copper Dragon Mini. You can reach out to me through Discord, or I'm going to leave a new comment on your previous comment, requesting that we get together and discuss some details in regards to it, and we'll get this out to you. Now, let's get into the episode. See, sometimes when you're in a dungeon, a lot of what you do sets the atmosphere. For instance, they hear a small, soft scraping behind them, like nails dragging across stone. The room feeling colder, the shadows stretching and flickering in unnatural ways, and a flicker of movement comes out. Just a little bit, a small claw of a skeletal hand, impossibly long, reaches from those shadows, and the players realize they are not alone. That was just a little demonstration of what you can do. It may not be as effective, but you could be as a DM, but that's how it is. These kind of videos aren't that way. We're talking about the boneclaw today from D&D 5e. I believe it belongs in Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse, or as everyone just calls it, Monsters of the Multiverse. And so this week we're going to be breaking, as always, we're going to be breaking down some of the lore about the creature, how it's used as an NPC, how it's used in storytelling, some hooks that you can go with it, and of course, how to run it against your players in combat. Let's get into it. Now, the first thing to talk about with the boneclaw is, of course, its origins, because its origins are going to inform everything else about it. Now, boneclaws don't operate independently because of what a boneclaw is. Now, a boneclaw is the result when a wizard attempts to attain lichdom and fails. When a wizard makes his phylactery, gets everything, has the ritual together, and he is too weak, either magically or physically, to put his soul into the box, we get the boneclaw. Now, this occurs because as the lich is performing this ritual to achieve lichdom, they have to put their soul into a phylactery. When they're putting that soul into the phylactery, if they fail to rehome their soul, like... Why am I talking about a soul like it's a puppy? When he's trying to rehome his soul, if he's not able to, it'll run off like a stray. And it'll go find the nearest evil creature and bind itself to that creature. Now, because that, of course, makes the boneclaw that creature's servant. Of course, this can only happen with an evil creature, which informs kind of how it behaves, and some different ways you can play that in your storytelling. Now, the boneclaw, because it is a servant creature, only serves a few roles. A boneclaw it will not really be your big bad. It'll be the thing in the dark, maybe to introduce your big bad. It'll be the thing guarding an area for your big bad. But I don't think, other than like campaigns where you're trying to bind these won't be very much characters in your story. They'll serve some purposes. Now, when you're building a boneclaw, you got to understand, to build a boneclaw is to build its master. Because you have to understand the master to understand the boneclaw, because it just does the will of its master. And because it just does the will of its master, you want to have this guy serving the most evil creature in the area. Maybe it's a cruel noble that bound the boneclaw to its enforcer, and it bound the boneclaw to it, and it's just, this creature is now out in the city being an enforcer for the dark powers of this noble, trying to get him to gain power. Maybe he's killing noble families. Maybe he's subverting and protecting him from harm. Maybe the noble doesn't even know he bound the boneclaw to him. Because here's the thing about boneclaws: they don't necessarily have to introduce themselves to their master. They just have to fulfill the desires, which means this thing doesn't necessarily have to meet the creature it's bound to, which can create some interesting moments where somebody doesn't realize that they're bound to this creature. Now, it could be somebody that doesn't realize they're evil, because these can only bond to actually evil-aligned characters. And because of that, the boneclaw gets the opportunity to act as something in the shadows hunting the party, and maybe it's just protecting its master, and the master doesn't know. It could be a vengeful spirit that has the boneclaw drawing in trespassers to hunt, or keeping them in once they're in. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person. It can be just an evil creature out there. This thing could serve a dragon, theoretically. So it's like you have so many options for what this thing serves. And because of that, it's a very versatile creature. And I like that kind of thing in a monster. Being versatile to be able to use a number of ways. These kind of servant-type creatures do that really well. Now, another way could be a cult leader. It just uses it as a weapon against rivals, hunts down rival cults, maybe takes on local churches. Now, something to understand about the monsters, they might not know they're bound, and because of that, that can create some interesting moral dilemmas. And this is where your kind of plot hooks and story threads come in. If they know a boneclaw is tied to a master, and the master doesn't know the boneclaw is tied to them, can the player sever the bond between the boneclaw and its master without killing the host, without killing the master? And so that creates an interesting dynamic with the boneclaw. Now, what happens when the boneclaw dies? Well, it just reforms. That's simple. It says it in a stat block. It just reforms in like a couple hours. If the master dies, it ceases to exist. It can't find a new host. So it's like, okay, this thing is an immortal evil tied to a host that cannot be killed. The only way to deal with it permanently is to deal with its master. And when the master is, if the master is trying to actively get rid of the boneclaw, they could be seeking out adventurers to help. They could be seeking out these adventurers, be like, okay, this thing is haunting me. I didn't ask for this. It's doing evil in my name. I didn't realize that I was evil when I did it. And he's out for redemption. Also, when the boneclaw ceases to be when the master gets redemption. So maybe the players can trick them into being a good guy. There's a number of ways you can take this, and it creates such an interesting thing where it's like, okay, an unsuspecting host for this thing creates an interesting dilemma for the players of how do we deal with it. Then, if the host is knowing and willing, you have a different kind of thing where you have a creature that is bound to serve its master, and its master knows it. And it's like, great, you can enact all my evil deeds out there. I need this person dead. I need this place robbed. I need you to burn this place down. It's like, great, boneclaws lurk in the shadows. Perfect. Because of their key abilities, they've got their shadow jump, they regenerate, putting itself back together, and their bond. Which means, yeah, it's hard to deal with these things. And as far as role-playing, the boneclaw won't roleplay that much, because the boneclaw is just a servant. In fact, the stat block of the boneclaw means it knows common and one language spoken by its master. That's fine. That's great. It may not communicate beyond trying to terrify. Why would it talk to them? What reason does it have to talk to them? Because it is permanently bound. Maybe it wants to be released. Maybe it wants to be released. And so maybe it sticks the players on them. Like I said, there's so many aspects you can go with the boneclaw. I really like this creature for like mid-level, not antagonist, but like, oh, you're in a town. This thing, the person doesn't want you there. You're level 10, level 11, level 12. Well, have a boneclaw. It's going to try to kill you. It's a great little encounter for your players. when you're role playing this boneclaw, it's supposed to be a horror type creature, and so in your storytelling, you want to have that kind of creature. You want it to be a lurking threat, not a direct attacker. It's going to try to hide in the dark. It's going to hit and run. It's going to get out, and maybe the players don't realize they're hunting it. You could have this entire horror setup where the players are investigating, say, a murder, say, a few different robberies, and it's like, okay, what's in the dark? Maybe they find unnatural claw scrapes. Maybe they see something elongated in the dark, or a creature of vast, of a larger than a man with arms unnaturally long, and it's like, oh, okay, that can be creepy. And so you want to set the fear of this creature. This thing lurks in the dark. NPCs might talk about an unseen horror when the last visions of their loved ones cut short by a claw in the darkness. See? And it's like, okay, it tries to be unnatural. They might find unnatural wounds, a large claw through it. The claws are great for descriptive elements in storytelling, in horror storytelling, because you can say, you guys find 3 claw marks on a wall, and the players immediately go, vampire or werewolf? And you go, no, bone claw. And so you can get them by that. And we already talked about some of the storytelling stuff. Now we got to get into combat. Now, the bone claw is simple. I like the bone claw. He's another simple creature done well. Because of what the bone claw does. The bone claw at base... Sorry, I'm just getting it up. The boneclaw at base is a large undead. Good stats around: 19 strength, 16 dex, 15 con, 13 intelligence, 15 wisdom, 9 charisma. It's not talking somebody down. It's smart enough to run basic strategies, try to terrify. It's a little bit smarter than your average human. I put average is hard to tell, but 10 is what's generally average. I like to extend that range to 8 to 12. So 8 to 12 is your average human. 8 on the low end, 12 on the high end. So this is just smarter than your high end average human. Good dex saves with good saving throws with dexterity, constitution, wisdom, getting proficiency bonus, meaning that the proficiency being 4, it has skills in perception, stealth, resistance to cold and necrotic, can't be charmed, exhausted, frightened, paralyzed, poisoned. CR 12 creature, by the way. While its master lived, a bone claw regains a new body in 1d10 hours with all of its hit points. And it appears within 1 mile of its master. This is interesting. This is a creature that reforms. This is a creature that your players cannot confront directly. Because if they kill this thing, it's just going to come back, and it's smart enough to be ticked off. So it's like, yes, if they're still in the town, they kill this thing, say, at the beginning. At the beginning, they confront this thing and kill it, and now it's standing over their beds when they're sleeping. Bada bing, bada boom. This thing keeps coming back until they deal with the master, until they deal with the curse. This creates a very interesting thing where your high-level characters... high skill level characters, your broken munchkins, they can whack away at this thing all they want. They can kill this thing 5 times over. But as long as they're in the town, because it comes back every 1d10 hours, unless you get a bad roll on that 1d10, they never get a rest. There is no rest because this thing will keep coming at them. And so it creates an interesting alternate win condition where it's like you cannot kill this thing you cannot win by killing this thing. Because it's just going to come back. You have to deal with its master. And if you're not aware with it, you got to spend that time trying to figure out how to kill it. What it is. You're spending time at the library. You're spending time trying to understand exactly what this thing is and who its host is so that you can deal with it. Because if this thing sees you as a threat, its host sees you as a threat, it's coming after you. And it will not rest. Sure, you might get a long rest if it breaks for 10 hours, but that's 8 hours where you weren't investigating. That's 8 hours where this thing was just reforming, considering how to come at you again. And if it's less than 8 hours, you're not getting a long rest. This thing is gonna wear down the party so quickly. This thing is gonna wear down the party very, very quickly. And let it be so. Let it wear down the party. This is not a one combat encounter and done type creature. You want to introduce this thing. Maybe it's injured when they find it first, and so it's not that big of a threat the first time. Maybe one of its hands have been cut off, so it doesn't deal nearly as much damage. And so it's like, great. That is great. They fight it first. It's not at its full strength. Now this thing's mad and it's coming for them. Let's get into its actual combat stuff. Unusual nature, doesn't need air, food, or drink, or sleep. It can make 2 claw attacks with a +8 to hit, reach of 15 feet, so it's trying to stay out of range. 3d10 +4 piercing, plus 2d10 necrotic. That doesn't sound like a lot for a level 12 creature. There's a reason for that. It can attack twice, has 2 bones, and it can grapple. Now, the reason why I'm thinking this thing isn't super deadly base is because it's not meant to be fought once. It's not meant to be fought once. It's meant to be fought 3, 4, 5 times over the course of 3, 4, 5 days as the players are getting exhausted, as they're dealing with other combat encounters, as they're dealing with other things. Say they're in a city. And they fought this boneclaw, they killed it. Okay, great. Now the ruffians are coming. Midway through, they got to fight them off. They're exhausted. Night comes. This thing shows up, breaks up their long rest, takes them down, and then doesn't take them out. But the next day comes. They say they got a long rest again. You say the boneclaw's showing up. And so it'll take a couple attempts at a long rest for them to realize we will not be allowed to rest while this thing lives. Its other big ability is its shadow jump. When in dim light or darkness, you're going to play that to advantage. It's mostly going to attack at night. It's mostly going to attack in the shadows. Dim light. Each creature within its choice, Constitution saving throw, or take 5d12 plus 2 necrotic damage. Then it teleports up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space it can see. Recharge 5 to 6. If you have questions about recharge, I know it's not sometimes clear for everyone. How recharge works is at the start of every one of its turns, you're going to roll a d6. On a 5 or 6, this ability is up again. So that can create a dangerous thing where this thing's moving back and forth. If it can get a shadow jump to get away, it will. And it's like, okay, maybe it takes itself out. Like, this is a smart enough creature to know it is better to come back than it is to go into a fight injured. So, keeping that in mind, its last action is Deadly Reach, where anything within 15 feet of it, and it enters a space within 15 feet of it, it can use its reaction to make one of its claw attacks. Personally, I like this. I like this creature. This is creates a very interesting combat encounter where the fighters have problems because they can't get in close. The wizards are going to shine in this. This creates a very interesting thing also where your munchkins can tear this thing down for centuries. But it's going to keep whittling them down. They're going to keep running out of resources. They're going to keep having to burn their spell slots, buy potions. This thing is going to whittle them down. This thing is not a big combat end boss encounter. That might be its master. This thing is war of attrition. This thing is a war of attrition monster. All it's going to do is fight, deal some damage, whittle away resources, spell slots, things like that, and then come back again in 1d10 hours and do it again. It is going to whittle down your players. And that's how you want to play combat. Think the long game with this. It knows it doesn't need to kill them now. If they're too strong, say it got in a first fight and it got defeated. Well, now it knows they're too strong. So what it's going to do is it's going to plan for that. It's going to say, well, I can fight them now. I can fight them now. I'll be back into 1d10 hours. If it's less than 1d10 hours, if it's less than 10 hours, if it's less than 8 hours, which odds are 1d10, that is a 70% chance that this thing will be able to interrupt a long rest. And so you play that out. You go, okay, so it's back. Oh, we just killed this thing. Yeah, you did. Wait, didn't we just kill this thing? Yeah, another one? Yeah. And then that comes back again. And it's learning their fighting styles. It knows the fighter's really strong. It knows the fighter will get a lot of hits off. It knows that the wizard's slow. It's learning. And so this creates a very interesting combat scenario for you guys where it goes, oh, this thing's learning about us. Oh, this thing's fighting us in a way that we didn't expect. Oh, crap. How do we deal with this thing? It creates a very interesting storytelling experience where your players cannot win against this thing with brute force. They have to figure out how to break the curse. They have to figure out how to separate the host. And maybe the dilemma they just find, okay, we need to kill the host. I don't care who the host is. Maybe we need to kill the host. And then you got your bigger boss where you're fighting against this host. Like I said, I like the boneclaw. The boneclaw is a fascinating creature. It can be used in so many ways as an underling. It can create a very interesting dungeon experience where in the dungeon, there's a bunch of combat encounters, but there's like 5 or 6 areas where the boneclaw can just pop up. And if the players leave the dungeon to long rest, that boneclaw is just going to pop up again. It's going to leave the dungeon to encounter them. And it's like, it doesn't have to be in city. I like boneclaws in the cities because in the cities, these boneclaws get the opportunity to shine. Because it's like, great, they're hunting prey in the cities. They're enacting will. The players get attacked in a place they feel safe. When they're resting in the inn, they get attacked. When they're drinking away, they're trying to enjoy their long rest, they get attacked. I like these attrition-based monsters because 5E's balance revolves around burning resources. And so if you can make the players burn as many resources as you can over and over and over and over again, they keep getting weaker. Eventually, this boneclaw just comes back, and the wizard's out of spell slots. The fighter's whittled down on health, hasn't had time to fully heal. They're out of hit dice. They're out of things, and it's like, great. Now this is a fight. And boneclaw is the perfect attrition. When you're running this thing, just think its primary attack is not its damage, it is attrition. Having to tear through 150 health every 3 hours, whoo boy, those players aren't going to be happy after about 5 days when they have 5 levels of exhaustion. It also sets that kind of clock. It can create a very tense moment. That's everything that I gotta say on the boneclaw. I really like this creature. It's a fun little creature to run. In fact, boneclaws do make an appearance in a Vedalong. We will catch you guys later. I'm going to take a quick break, and then I am going to get back to some D&D prep. We'll see you guys later, and that is where we're going to leave it for today.